All right, in the last video, we learned about external libraries, how to work with external libraries. And in a future lesson, we're going to learn how to download libraries other than the core Python libraries that are already installed when you install Python. There's literally bazillions of them. And there's one for almost anything you want to do, and we're going to demonstrate some of those at a later date. But one thing I do want to teach you how to do now is how to create your own modules. And part of the reason is we're going to start working on more object-oriented programming concepts pretty soon. We're going to be creating our own custom variable types. We're going to be creating classes. And a large part of object-oriented programming is code reuse, and one of the best ways to package code to be reused is to create your own modules. And let's say you're a biologist, a research biologist, and you do a lot of studies of animal populations, and you've written your own code that does population calculations or things like that. And you might use it in a lot of different programs. You might have variables that you pass to it that define how a particular population is counted or whatever. And yeah, you could make a copy of your program and just change the handful of things you need to change. But the better way from an object-oriented approach, because it leads to fewer errors and it makes your code much more user-friendly and easier to reuse, would be to create your own library. And in Python, it is really, really easy. So I'm going to demonstrate first. I have created my own library here that creates a banner. And the banner is actually going to fill in whatever names that I put here in the banner, and it'll be like at the beginning of every one of my programs. So when I run that, let's try it again. Okay, it must have run in the background. Oops. Come on, dude. Okay, when I run that, I get my banner to run. All right, and it used the parameters here, and all I did was I imported a library that I created called mylib for my library. So how did I make it work? Well, really, really easy. I created a file called mylib.py, and I put it in the same directory as the one that is calling it, the same directory as the banner.py that is actually calling mylib.py. Now, it doesn't have to be in the same directory, but it does have to be in a directory that is in Python's path. And since this is not a lot of you might know what that means, some of you might not know what that means, but basically Python, when it's installed, has what are called environmental variables, and the environment variables tell it what directories to look for things in. And the simplest way to make sure that your external library works is just to put it in the same directory as the file that is calling it, or you can put it in any folder that's in the Python path. But I didn't really want to have to go into getting you to locate it in the right place. So for now, when we write these external modules, just make sure you put them in the same path. I'm going to go over the code that generated this banner, though, because you will notice that it generates a banner that has even edges. And the reason that it has even edges is that I had to do a little work here, and I did this very quickly, and this is by no means probably the best code I could have written to do this. It's not horrible, but it probably could have been a lot more compact, but I was rushing, so don't make fun of me. So what I did was I figured out that each of these lines was 27 hashtags long, and I knew I was going to add a space before and after the name and the title. So to get the length, to know how much padding I needed to put on the sides of the name and the title lines, I subtracted the two spaces, so I got 25, and then I subtracted the length of the name that I passed and the title that I passed. Then I checked to see if the name was even or odd. If it was odd, and I used modulus division, and I don't know if we've talked about that, but when you do the %sign, what that does is that divides this by 2. It divides, in this case, LName by 2, and it gives us the remainder. If the remainder is a 1, it's an odd number. If the remainder is a 0, it's an even number. If it was odd, I subtracted 1 to make it even. And I also added an extra space at the back so that the padding would even out. Then I divided the length of my name, or LName, by 2. And you'll notice I used 2 division symbols, not just 1. This is integer division. Normally, in Python, if you do division, even if it's by 2 integers and the result is an integer, the resulting data type is a float. And you can't do this little trick with a float. And this little trick is to multiply an integer times a symbol, and then you just get multiple copies of the symbol. So I divided this in half. I padded before and after my name with hashtags, and because of the math up here, it was the correct length. And I did the same thing with the title. So now, anytime I call this, and I'm showing you the code not because there's anything particularly interesting or unique in it, but the more code you see over time, the more things you see people do, the more it sticks. And there's a couple little things in there that are worth remembering if we haven't done modulus division. It's good to see that. Remember that that exists. And if you don't know about integer division, that's useful too. So now, just for fun, just to make sure it works, because I actually only tried it with the one banner, let's make sure it works here. I'll change it, and yeah. So whatever I put in there, I get a nice even square. All right, so that's how you create your own modules, and really not a lot to it. Incidentally, you can also define variables in your, or not variables, you could define constants in your external library. So for example, I could have said, and sort of tradition is to put constants in all caps. Don't really do that in Python, but I'm going to do it anyway. And let's say my constant is, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll go ahead and save that. And I could, if I wanted, wrong thing, where am I going here? I could have also I could print my constant. So that's how you can create your own modules. You can create classes in your own modules. We haven't really gotten to creating classes yet, but you can. You can create functions in your module. You can create constants in your module. Lots of things. So that's all there is to it. Oh, I do want to show you. Sorry, I want to demonstrate for those of you that do not yet have Python working, and it's like watching a tennis match. They go back and forth. Yesterday they were telling me that we're not going to be able to install Python remotely. You're going to have to swap laptops. Today they're telling me they might have a solution again. So still waiting on that. If you need to do this and you do not have Python installed, because today's assignment does involve creating an external library, not every online compiler can do this, but repl.it, which I believe I gave you guys the link to already, does have the ability to create multiple libraries. And you will see that I have created a second file here just by clicking this. I gave it a py file extension, and I was able to call it even though it's on this online compiler. Since they're together here, you can do that. One word of caution is that the what's my one word of caution? I had a word of caution. I really did. One word of caution. I don't remember what it was, but one thing that I did notice, it happened a lot last year in my advanced programming class. You do need to be careful when you name your secondary file to make sure you don't accidentally use a keyword or accidentally use the name of a core module. For example, if you used math, that's going to cause you problems. It's either going to break your external module or it's going to break the math external module. So be careful about that. And oh, the one other thing I did want to tell you. So I played with this today and I discovered that your external library needs to be other than main.py. Now, main.py is not special. It's not like Java or C where you have a function or a method called main. In Python, we don't care about main. Main doesn't mean anything special to us. It just so happens it's how these people happen to name the default file when you created it. And it appears that your external library needs to be in anything but main. That may not be true, but the quick experimentation I did with this site, that's what it did to me. All right, so that's it for External Modules 102. Have a great day.